I always kind of just like figured, well, cop interviews will just never happen because, to get the approval of the department and all that, that's just not going to happen. So I gave up on it.
Yeah, it is a huge stumbling block, except for when you're retired, then it's
retired is
free
different.
game.
And some of my favorite interviews on my channel are with, retired cops like Mike Dowd or Kevin Donaldson. But to have an active cop is a whole nother story.
Yeah, I listened to the one with Kevin, and wow, that was really good.
Yeah, it's one of the best interviews on my channel.
Seems like a really nice guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He's great.
It's funny, I forgot last time we met, I actually arrested one of your guys that you had on the show.
I'm sure you've arrested a lot of the guys.
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones I know of course, it was just recent. It was a guy named John. He was like a male model that came from a really
a blonde guy?
Yes.
Really good looking?
Yes.
He got arrested for what?
It's been about maybe 6 months, but I think it was like a burglary, theft type of thing.
Yeah, these guys they're always stealing to make their money for drugs.
Yes, yeah, unfortunately. And the reason why I knew one of the places we were searching for him, so I was running a fugitive apprehension team, and he was a fugitive at the time. And it was like a halfway home, halfway house type of scenario. And the guy said, "Oh yeah," he's like, he shouldn't be hard to find. He did an interview on this soft White Underbelly show, and talking about his life and all that. And then that clicked in my mind. I was like, "Oh, okay, that's interesting." We don't come across that all the time, but yeah.
So you're an active police officer.
Yes.
With LAPD on Skid Row, right?
Based out of Skid Row, but my jurisdiction's all of Southern California. Whatever crime happens in the city of LA that has a nexus to it, and it leads to wherever, that's where we're going.
You've been with the department for how long?
I've been a cop. I was previously NYPD. That's where I knew of Mike Dowd, and going on 3 decades now.
Oh, is that right?
So yeah, with NYPD and LAPD.
Did you always want to be a cop when you were a kid?
Always.
Really?
Yeah. It's ever since. I always try to think back. You try to think back how far it goes, and I think I could trace it to about maybe 11 or 12 years old.
What is it about being a cop that appeals to you?
It's changed through the years. Or as I get more in touch with myself and my feelings and find out what really drives me and what I'm comprised of, and DNA and forces that influence you and change your trajectory in life. My sole, I think, purpose in life is to be a protector. And it just happened to be law enforcement appealed to my senses at that, formative time of the teenage years. And I saw it as like a tribe of men with a purpose, with a good purpose. And then all the layers on top of that as you go through life, finding out about, I grew up as a solo child. So I think as I've learned more about myself, I felt that connection of trying to connect with, like a brotherhood where that was lacking in my household. Since it was all on me, I didn't have that kinship with other siblings. So that police department became like a surrogate family. So growing up in a real chaotic, Irish American alcoholic family where there's just a lot of chaos and disruption, that the police department was a really good surrogate family where you had role models and good mentors. And not that I didn't get that in my family, it enhanced the life experience. And I was like, wow, I can get paid to do a good thing, have brothers and sisters that are really good people for a good purpose. And I was like, I'm all in. This is great. And then even when I do leave the police department after, like I said, I've been doing this for 3 decades, I'm always going to be trying to live my life of service, whether it's even now, if it's on duty or off duty, like trying to help you with your channel I'm trying to do a service to my profession, to our nation. And it's great because you could speak directly to the people. This is such a new experience where you can take an ordinary average guy like me and it can be seen by millions of people and convey a message and really get across what's going on in the streets, what's going on in the police department, what's going on in jails. And to get unfiltered truth it's very rare in our lifetime anyway, I think. And again, that's my perspective. So,
but as you said, being of service, I think is the key to being fulfilled in life.
Yes, that's what I've learned through the years. I mean, and that's what's great about the police department. You can have a direct impact of profound measures on someone. in the worst case scenario, like sometimes I'll arrest people in a super down in the dumps that they got arrested and they're thinking it's the end. And I tell them, no, this isn't the end. This is the beginning, but the choice is yours. It could be the beginning of a rebirth, an introduction to spirituality by whatever means that you choose. In jail and prison, unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of resources, which I think should change if we're going to be really serious about rehabilitation in this country. Mm-hmm. But there are avenues within this criminal justice system that you can get help. And whether it's through religion or someone exposing you to a trade or what have you, you can make that change and have that spiritual rebirth. And I think that's one of man's best qualities, is like that redemption and rebirth and that phoenix rising. So that's what I try to convey to the arrestees or just people I come across in everyday life. And as I'm sitting here thinking, that's why I like doing these things, thinking of like sentencing, what we could do to really enhance rehabilitation in this country. It's like, if it's possible, why not, if a kid gets arrested, why not sentence him to being on a sports team? Like so many kids, especially kids in the ghetto in the inner city, the parents, if they have one, usually raised by grandparents, grandma's doing all the heavy lifting, they don't have the money to put someone into a sports program, a boxing program, jiu-jitsu, like I do. And why don't we put that structure and that discipline into that kid's life? And then if it's an older person in their 20s or whatever, you can never stop learning. You can always pick up new skills. Sentence them to working like next door at a bicycle shop. Say, hey, you have to work with this guy for 6 months, learn everything you can, so you could, if he died tomorrow, you could take this place over. So I think there's a lot of room for creativity in our criminal justice system that we're not taking advantage of, whether it's because it's an ulterior reasons of making money or keeping people marginalized in society. I don't know. I mean, the truth is out there. I mean, it's probably a little bit of both. There's many layers and complexities to this world, but that's what I would like to see going forward in my line of work. And I think we're doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, which is the definition of insanity. So people watching this, if there's any people of influence, let's try something else. Let's move forward past putting somebody in a box, just very inhumane. Very few people, I think, go into prison and come out better. I've seen a few, but I've seen way more that it makes it worse, and it's just obvious. You just take an animal and you keep him in a crate, you treat him like garbage, you beat him, you give him horrible food, you give him a horrible atmosphere, he's not gonna come out and be a loving, caring pet. Same thing with a person. We're just animals like anything else. We just have the abilities to tell stories like this.
What are your thoughts on good guys and bad guys? Because the cops are typically the good guys and you're chasing down the bad guys. But we're all just humans when you boil it all down, and we're capable of good or bad.
Correct.
I'm sure there's guys in the police department who are doing some bad stuff, and I'm sure there's guys that are lifelong drug addicts or gang members or whatever, and there's good in them as well.
100%. There's a mentor of mine who's actually an ex-con. He was one of the youngest ex-cons to enter San Quentin prison. People might know him. He was a very prolific author. His name was Eddie Bunker. And he gave me a quote he wrote out on a piece of paper. It's unbelievable. He said, if I can get it right, it says, not all the good guys are good and not all the bad guys are bad, but only the good ones can tell the difference. So I know plenty of good people have done horrible things, and I've encountered many bad people that have done good things. Probably somewhere, the major part of society was somewhere in the middle, and you have those extreme ends of saints, and then you have the rest that are just the ultimate of evil. But everyone else could be influenced in between. It's just what their product of environment is, or if they have had good schooling, a good parenting, or a good mentorship, and it pushes them the other way. So that decision, it can be made every day. It's made by me. I try to come in here or just starting work, I say, okay, I try in my mind, like, what's my intention for the day? Like, what do I want to accomplish? Yesterday I screwed up. I treated someone bad, or I was short with people, or I was just in a bad mood. Today, going forward, I want to, as I'm driving here, I want to let people going forward me. I don't want to speed. I want to be a caring driver. I want to be very cautious. I want to, give people a thumbs up, or when you're at a red light, look over and smile. Those little things have ripple effects through society and within you. So in the police department, it's like anything else. We're just people. We're your neighbor, we're your husband, we're your cousin. We just happen to enter a profession. And there's some people out there in my profession that have done horrible things. And we do everything we can and to get them out, fire them, imprison them, and everyone else, we try to build them up. And so every day I send my guys out there, we had that decision. And it's everything's by mood. I mean, you could be a great person, but something just happens at home and rattles your cage, or someone on the street that you encounter says the wrong thing to you, and then boom, you could snap and make the wrong decision right then and there. And you could be the best of persons, best of have a great heart, but take that extra second and then boom, someone could thump someone or write them a ticket erroneously, or just being a prick and really giving someone a bad day. It's like one of my mentors says, instead of have a nice day, he says, give a great day. So I've worked with some unbelievable people that are almost close to sainthood, I would say, that go out there and really do God's work. And there was some people I was like, man, this guy does not belong in this profession. He is horrible. And luckily, from what I've seen, the system has spit those people out. Some stay, of course, and we see those headlines every day. We've seen the videos, but for the most part, great people I've had the opportunity of working with, like I said, through 3 decades. But yeah, it's a job, and it's comprised of humans, and humans are messy, and they're capable of some animalistic, horrible things.
Yeah, you work in some of the roughest neighborhoods in the country. South Central LA and Skid Row are 2 of the worst.
Yeah, Brooklyn North and Bushwick in the 2000s, and Times Square in the 90s. I've seen some really horrible places where, like, this nation's truly number one. Like, how could this be a byproduct? What are we doing wrong? What are we doing to fix that? And here, in particular in Skid Row, it's just it's an embarrassment as a U.S. American. It's like, wow, these are problems we could have solved ages ago. It's like, how are we in 2022 still not rectifying that? It pains me every day.
What are your thoughts on what the solution might be?
Well, the thing, what I could firmly grasp,
it's not going to be simple. I know that.
Yes, or it could be simple, but it's complex. Simple, not easy. But I almost look at it as like a 1 through 10, like where the police come in, we're maybe at like 7 or 8. It's almost like asking a heart surgeon, like, what are you doing? How come we have all this heart disease? What are you doing about curing heart disease? And he's like, hey, I'm at number 10. I'm the one that's going in surgery and fixing this guy. I didn't create this problem. So that's where I'm at. I'm like, I didn't create this problem. So we got to backtrack this to the beginning. So it all comes down to literally the minute you come out and or even probably before that, prenatal care, or how are people being raised before they're even born? Do parents, especially in underprivileged neighborhoods, do they have access to prenatal care and good environments, or the mental skills to learn how to bear a child? And then when that child's born, what kind of food is it being given? What kind of guidance? What kind of atmosphere environmentally? There's a lot of...
The lack of good role models is what's like such a glaring thing in my opinion.
Like a good family
I look at the people that I had as role models when I was young, and then I go to like South Central, or I go to Skid Row, and I see there's nothing for these people. There's nothing for them to look up to and say, oh, I'd like to be like that person one day.
Yes.
I aspire to do this. I aspire to do what? Sell drugs?
Yes, you're born pretty much into using baseball vernacular. You stepping up to plate with strike 2.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do get out of it, but a lot more than too many of them don't. And it's not their fault. And that's why there's these programs to get people, giving them more an advantage of someone else that's growing up in a permissive environment. And people have to understand that. We have to, I think a lot of like social programs get a bad rap because there's people abusing them. But there are people, like I said, that walking up to the plate, strike 2, that need these services. And we could do a lot more for people just in the environments we're creating for people to live in. is horrendous. Air quality, food quality, just resources to good parks, clean streets that are free of debris, sound and noise. There's so much that comes into play. Where I live, it completely changes my mood when that's kind of one of the good things selfishly that I liked working in Skid Row. Like the minute I left my police station and I see all just this cacophony of just human madness. And as I'm getting closer to my neighborhood, I just feel that toxicity draining from my body. And so seeing a good environment, beach and sunshine and paved roads and happy people, that immediately changes my mood. So the people that are living in neighborhoods that have the opposite, they're in a constant fight or flight feeling because everywhere they look is a threat. And then we just become a product of our environments, and we're expecting people to do the opposite. It's like just when you're walking out the door, they already have a chip on their shoulder and are on edge, and it's no fault of their own.
No, and they see no opportunity. You know, like in these neighborhoods, these people don't see any kind of chance for breaking out of this.
It's pretty rare. The one equalizer I think that's changed a lot of dynamics is the internet. You know, before growing up, when I grew up, all I knew was my 4 square blocks, a couple of knuckleheads that I lived in the neighborhood and my family. Other than that, I didn't know about the rest of the world. I didn't know what Afghanistan was or where it was, and the other opportunities that were out there, different skills. But the internet, I mean, any kid has a phone or access to a library or whatever can get on there and see that there's a world outside of their 4 square blocks that could be surrounded with abusive parents, knucklehead neighbors, abusive uncles and whoever, pimps in the street, prostitutes. Like, hey, this isn't the whole world. There's something beyond that. There is hope. So that lifeline for me was books, fortunately, or one of the lifelines. I was a voracious reader, so I knew these books were like a portal. I mean, that's how I learned about the Los Angeles police. That's how I learned about the West Coast culture, seeing all this. I knew it was outside of grimy New York City. I was like, wow, I could live somewhere else and experience all these different things in a maritime, rich like environment. And that was like incredibly appealed to me. So that was my source of hope. So
how long have you been in LA?
I came out here originally in '96. I moved back to New York City in 2000 and came back out here in about 2004. So played a little bit of hopscotch.
How do they compare?
Oh, it was night and day. One of the things I didn't understand in LA when I first came out to LA, of course it's sunshine and all these beaches and just beautiful people everywhere. The places I visited at the time. I was like, why is everyone so angry? Why is everyone on edge? I was like, if I grew up here, I'd be so happy. And then, as you get older and, wiser, you peel back the layers, you find out what makes people tick. But it was paradise when I finally came out here. But that's what I was looking for.
But the rough neighborhoods in New York how do they compare to the rough neighborhoods in LA?
That's interesting. It's a good question. The main difference when you're going through a rough neighborhood in, say, like Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, New York City, like you just know immediately, like, wow, this does not look good. It doesn't feel good. And then when you start seeing people, how they interact, like I'm in a bad neighborhood. Like the ghettos in LA are very, very deceiving. It's like these single family houses, lawns, even the projects, one story, 2-story projects. So the projects where I grew up, it was just monstrosities, towers of just doom. And so aesthetically it looks good, but then when like I said before, you peel back that layer, you're like, all right, this is a really tough neighborhood and inhabited by some really, really impoverished people.
Does your job get to you emotionally?
Not anymore. It did when I didn't have the tools to really to recognize how to mitigate those feelings of despair and lack of hope, and
the stress has got to just build and build and build.
It does. It's still there, but now I just know how to manage it. To manage it through many different ways and tools through the years, and that's one of my missions now as a supervisor, is to give my guys those tools and let them not make those mistakes that I did through alcohol and sex and just destructive living. So, yeah, it was rough for a couple of years. It got really dark, and thankfully I had tools available to me and good people that got me through that. And now that I'm at that certain level, I'm going to push that back down and help others. Again, that life of service. So whether it's people on the street or within my own organization, everything's being about of service.
How old are you now?
I am 49.
49. So you've seen and learned a lot living this life, right?
I think the hubris of me, like, oh yeah, I've learned a lot, I've done a lot, like, no way. I have so much more to learn, I have so much more to go. A lifetime student. I try to be the teacher, but I know I have a long way to go. And every day I'm trying to chip away at that stone and get better and be better.
You sound like you're still happy with your decision to become a police officer.
Oh, absolutely. I wouldn't have traded it for the world. It's a portal to lives that most people never get to touch. Similar to yours, you're talking to people from all around the spectrum, and policing offers you that of talking from billionaires to people that don't literally have a nickel in their pocket, and everyone else in between. And you're getting to help people through all different stages of their life, and in the same time, hopefully helping yourself with those experiences, enriching your life, enriching your spirit, and it's been a great ride.
Have there been any opportunities in your life where you've been able to help like an individual who was obviously taking the wrong path and steer him in a better direction?
Yeah, there's one that pops out in my mind. I was thinking about it before because there's the bike shop right over here. There was an individual that was actually a fellow New Yorker from Brooklyn, and I was working in undercover capacity back in the early 2000s, and this individual from Brooklyn ended up selling me narcotics. And then when we ended up apprehending him, we had to fight him. So we were good with it. At the end of it, we didn't have to hurt him. You know, we all just had a couple of scrapes and bruises and all that. Dusted him off. Said, "Hey, it's nothing personal. You know, you can't run and fight from us." And he understood that. My guys understood that. And long story short, he ended up going to prison for maybe a year or two. And when I was here in Skid Row, I was just getting done stopping someone for whatever it was, and I see this guy on a bike racing towards me at full speed. So I kind of step back, and this guy gets off his bike, and he's got this huge smile. I'm like, what the hell is this about? And he comes right up to me, and he's like just smiling, looking at me. I'm like, okay. I'm like, hey, can I help you? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you don't remember me? So I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I mean, I've talked to millions of people, and stopped so many people, arrested so many people through the years, and it's clicking, but not really yet. And then I'm like, hey, refresh my memory. He's like, I tried to sell you drugs. I'm like, yes, I remember you. So I asked him, I was like, hey, how are you doing? And because he looked completely different, and he emptied out his soul and told me, he's like, that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I was like, tell me more. And at the time, I remember speaking with him. He said him and his old lady were going at it. They were fractured, and he was like an abusive type of guy, and he was just leading a horrible lifestyle. And he said he got back with his old lady. He got off dope. He stopped selling drugs for that need, and he ended up getting a job working at a bike shop, repairing bikes and selling bikes. And you could see it in his eyes. He had clarity, facial structure. He had meat on him. He just looked like a healthy individual. And so we hugged, and I was like, hey, keep in touch. Here's my number. Here's my business card. And it's just rare to see that because, like I said, we're working all over the city and the county, and to link up with people that you've incarcerated through the years. It's happened once or twice, a couple times through my career. And that just choosing that profession and having just that one ripple effect on that person, that made everything else worth it. It was a beautiful thing.
There are pressures that cops go through that I think a lot of people just don't realize. You guys go through this stuff every day. Like when you're approaching somebody, any one of them can be a loose cannon.
Yeah, it's kind of like when I was describing, living in a non-permissive neighborhood. You're in a constant state of fight or flight. Is this person a friend? Is this a foe? So you're always in this, they call it condition yellow. There's like 3 stages. Condition white, when you're just kind of walking through life, lackadaisical, you're not thinking about it, like in your house, there's no threats. Condition yellow is when you're aware of your surroundings and something could possibly go wrong, but you're not paranoid, you're not on edge, you're just very aware. And then condition red, when you know violence is imminent and something's about to go wrong or could go wrong, like when we're conducting a raid, serving a search warrant or on someone, and you're ready, you're keyed up, you're about to hit that door and it's about to go down, it's condition red. And then condition black is when it's actually happening, you're involved in that kinetic activity of fighting for your life or defending somebody or trying to commit a rescue or something like that. So the stress is always there.
It's got to take a toll on
It does. I mean, just the simple fact of entering a shift work occupation, that takes easily 10 to 15 years off your life. I think the World Health Organization has acknowledged that it opens you up to cancer, and shift work is detrimental to your health. So just walking in the door, and when you're a rookie, you're working nights and weekends and no holidays for an extended amount of time. So that's stress on your body. And then you layered upon the politics of policing, the dangers out in the street, and then your own self-inflicted wounds of medicating those stresses in negative ways by, alcoholism, bad food, bad diet, bad environment. A big thing that we don't look at is our social diet. Everyone's obsessed with what they're eating or drinking, but what you see, what you put out, what you speak is just as important as what you take in, in a physical form into your body. And the police department could be a real, negativity is very contagious there. And it can be a constant people bitching and moaning about, I can't wait to get home. I'm done talking to this guy. I just want to get the hell out of here. I put in for this holiday to get off and it got denied to me. So it's all these things that just chip away at your soul that a lot of people are unaware of. So when you encounter someone on the street and a cop looks pissed or treats them like crap, not that it's right, it's that these are all the underlying things that are in play before you even have that encounter. Someone that's angry and pissed already, which could be a ticking time bomb out there. So that's why I try to do things like this and really try to educate my occupation and others out there of we have to take care of ourselves before we could take care of anyone else.
Are there any particularly interesting stories of what you've been through on the streets?
Yeah, there's one that always pops out in my mind. It's beautiful and ugly and tragic at the same time. It's back when I was a beat cop working in Hollywood. We were backing up another unit who got a radio call, 911 call, and these 911 calls in the beginning, you don't get much information on what it is. So it was just like someone needed help and that was it. Dropped the phone line, dropped. So we go to back them up. We all show up and we're at this house, really ritzy part of Hollywood. I think like Andrew Dice Clay lived across the street. There were some players, very manicured neighborhood. So usually nothing too much would ever happen in this particular neighborhood. So we're kind of lackadaisically walking up like, what is it? Some kind of false alarm? Dumb me, we should never do that. We should go into every situation knowing it could be a problem. And this time it was a problem. We pie off from the door and look through the window and we see an individual laid out in a supine position. And I don't want to get too graphic, but he was completely nude. His genitalia was removed and it was laying beside him. And then upon closer examination, once we breached the door, he had, I believe, a watch covering his eyes. So we walk in and he had a fireplace poker that you stir the fireplace with sticking out of his chest. So this obviously isn't your thing that we see every day. So we walk in and this is something like out of the movie Seven. Like, wow, what the hell is this? What did we just walk into? And it, even us guys have seen a whole lot, it took us by surprise. So we immediately see that. We start clearing the rest of the residents, looking to see if anyone else is inside the house. any victims or any perpetrators. And we make entry into this bedroom, and all we see is a head and nothing else. So in the primary residence where we first saw it was a complete body with the genitalia next to it, and then just his head. And then when we clear the rest of the place, we don't see the body. And we didn't really see a blood trail or anything. Like, there's just random head. We're like, wow, we've got something right here. This is one for the books. And so we start going through all the normal homicide protocols. We establish a perimeter, get a crime scene going, and the whole rigmarole that you see on TV. We start, calling in detectives and everything else. So while we're going through all the steps, one of the steps is canvassing the neighborhood for possible witnesses, people that could add, to the scenario. What did you hear? What did you see? What have you? And in this particular part in Hollywood, out here in LA, people are from all over the spectrum. A lot of people don't know their neighbors, myself included. I'm guilty as charged. Some of my neighbors I don't know, and I should do concerted effort to do that. Note to self. But I digress. This block, almost every person I interacted with knew this victim, and which was very rare, because this person was these people were very special in our world, and I'll add to that as it goes on. So they're telling us this person was a doctor, and with us utmost character, very loving, very caring, great neighbor, great person. So we're just intaking all this information. We're like, wow, this unbelievable person just got killed in a horrific way. So we're canvassing the neighborhood, speaking to all these people. We're hearing this guy's bona fides, just ridiculous. And we get another 911 call at a house across the way from this person on another block. And we're like, what the hell now? And it ended up, so we all rush over there, and it turns out to be they said it was a homicide in progress. So we show up, and there's this little old lady, sweetest old lady. It could be someone's, reminded me of my grandma. She's sitting on a stoop, and she's just crestfallen, like you've taken everything from her life, just drained her of her soul. So like, get down to her level, like, ma'am, what's wrong? You called the police? What happened? And she's like, yes, my boyfriend is inside and he's dead. So this 80-something-year-old lady, I was like, boyfriend? I'm like, oh, that's kind of strange. And then I'm like, he's dead? I'm like, oh boy, what the hell is this? So like, okay, ma'am, sit here. Let's move you to the side, and let's get you some help. And now we have to enter this residence and clear it, find out what we have. So we end up breaching that residence, and it was all steam. It was like, I don't know if you've seen the movie Insomnia with Al Pacino. There's this part in the movie where he's going through Alaska, and there's all this fog, and he's searching for a perpetrator, and the fog is so thick that he can't see past his hand. And that's what I related to. The heat was turned up to this house to maximum, and all the water in the house was turned up, so it was just all steam. And the steam, like I said, I couldn't see past my hand. And now we're looking for a homicide suspect, and we don't know what's going to pop out or what we're going to see. So we ended up clearing the residence, and we find the body where obviously the head came from in the other residence. So there's a body without a head, and it's completely filleted, like a canoe. Just someone completely opened up, looked like organs were removed, and just completely obliterated. It was something that you kind of see at the coroner's office as a homicide detective or investigator, but much more brutal and ritualistic, it seemed. And we go through the rest of the house, and then we come back out and speak to the elderly woman, and they were so sweet. They were dating, she said, and that was her boyfriend, and they knew each other, I think maybe about 10 years or so, and they would have lunch every day today, and she just happened to find him in that state. And I just thought that was so horrendous to have to see a loved one in that condition and in that stage of their life. But then again, it was so sweet that people in their 80s were still dating. unbelievable. That just warmed my soul and tore it apart at the same time. So as the investigation continued, what we found out was there was this very deranged individual with a shattered background. He was an ex-Marine, and he was spun out on methamphetamine. And this is by his words. And he was going through the neighborhood and just knocking on doors. And it's the morning time, no one's opening up doors, but elderly people that are possibly lonely or just living in that that Camelot era of where you opened up doors to strangers, see what they need or what have you. And he opened up the door, and the perpetrator punched him right in the face, this 80-something-year-old man. And when you punch somebody in the face, particularly in the mouth, it's why we teach open hand strikes, so you don't break your hand. He punched him in the mouth, and his hand immediately swelled. And in his ranged, warped mind, he got completely enraged. He thought it was because of the elderly man's bad dental hygiene, and then completely took out the rage that he just broke his hand on his face and thought it was the man's fault, and just completely, committed the most horrific acts that I've ever seen in my career. Sexual acts, ritualistic acts, like I said, of removing his head, removing organs, and just doing complete depravity that human beings shouldn't be capable of. And then once he removed his head, he took off his belt and wrapped it around through his throat and his mouth, and put it over his shoulder and like a gunny sack, and hopped the fence and to his neighbor and into the doctor's house. So he's got this head on through this belt, and he goes through, breaches the doctor's house, who just happened to be on the line with an airline agency. But his airline agency, I think it was somewhere back east, maybe in Georgia or whatever. So back before the internet, where you could book everything online, you do it the old school way on the phone, give you credit card information. And so he's on the phone with booking his airline ticket, and he looks over and sees this madman with a head and coming at him. So he drops the phone, and the operator on the line hears this brutality going on, and that's when they generated the 911 call to us. And he did those acts that I described to the doctor, ended up taking his keys to his car, and then ended up fleeing, and then ended up getting caught he was in Hollywood, and by that time, his picture got plastered all over the news. And a security guard from Paramount Studios, I believe, sees this guy scaling a wall at Paramount Studios and says, "Oh, what the hell is this? Some guy's scaling a wall." And then he's like, "Wait a second, that's the guy that was just on the news." I think that the news feed was still on there, like in a little command post, and they call 911. My guys get there and capture him. So he goes to prison, what have you. But years down the road, I'm at a doctor's office, and I'm getting my moles checked out, which I got to do again. Irish skin is horrendous, and so I'm talking to this doctor. It's the first time I'm seeing him, so we're doing a getting to know you game. Oh, what do you do for a living? Oh, how long have you been a doctor? All that stuff. And I asked him. I was like, "Hey, how did you get into this line of business? Particularly dealing with dermatology and what have you?" Like, "Oh yeah." He was like, I came from a real shattered home, horrible lifestyle, broken down family, and one of my friends just happened to be, his dad was a doctor. I was like, "Oh, really? Okay." And he goes, he became a surrogate father for me, and I really loved him. He loved me, and he mentored me. And I wanted to follow in his footsteps and live his life of service. So he ended up putting me through medical school. I was like, "Wow, that's beautiful. That's something else." And then as he's continuing the story, he tells me, "Yeah, unfortunately, he got killed." I was like, "Oh, wow." I was like, "What happened?" And then he starts relating the story of what I just described to you. He was the doctor that everyone in the neighborhood loved, and he was the one that put him through medical school, became that surrogate father figure, and ended up getting killed, which was, it just shows that that's a cycle of life of the darkness and the light all in one. And the other figure that ended up getting killed, the elderly man that had the elderly girlfriend, he ended up being a screenwriter that did all the old school, like Abbott and Costello meets the Frankenstein and Three Stooges. He was a real big screenwriter, and he became the victim to McCarthyism. He got erroneously singled out for being a communist, which he wasn't. Got blackballed, and that was the end of his career. But that didn't stymie his love as well as being a good person, because he too, when we canvassed the neighborhood, talking to his neighbors and possible witnesses, they said the same thing. This guy was aces. He was just an unbelievable person, and everyone loved him. So we encountered these two souls that were mentors and changed people's lives, that went through adversity and through some of the toughest times in our country, and then got brutalized and killed, ended their beautiful lives in such a tragic way. And it really encapsulates of what I've seen in life, of how we could destroy and uplift people. And it's just, these people are all around us. We just have to make those choices of who we want to be and who we want to follow.
Wow, that's a great story. Terrible story, but interesting as can be. You've been doing this long enough to answer this question, I think. Do you see us as a society getting better or worse? More violent, more?
I struggle with that thought. I'm an optimist at heart, and we can get better. And I think there are aspects that are getting better, but then I see other aspects deteriorating. So it's like, I think we're getting better and worse at the same time, if that makes sense.
It's changing.
Yeah, it's just our environment has changed. I know there's a lot of angry, disenfranchised souls out there in every occupation, every source of life. And my job as being of service is being a peacekeeper. So trying to keep peace within myself and to others. And I can't stress that enough, of how there's so much hate and disenfranchisement out there in the world, and one little simple gesture could change someone's trajectory and stop them from causing violence within their household, road rage on the street, whatever it is. Like I said, I just came back from driving. So it's like, when you let someone in front of you, just a simple gesture, like, oh, wow, okay, oh, thanks, that was really nice. And the chances of them doing that to someone in the immediate future are a lot higher. And now you could have just prevented a possible road rage or a shooting or something crazy, or that guy coming home to his family after a tough day at work and taking it out on them. So our choices are so critical. Every little second counts and has an effect on society as a whole. So is society getting better? I know I'm getting better. So I really try to be intentional with my actions now, as opposed to the past where I didn't have those tools.
That's great. Jim, what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in your life?
The most important lesson, it's easy. Just be kind. You know, some of the most happiest people I know that I've encountered through life had zero. Like people here in Skid Row or in Venice Beach, they didn't have a pot to piss in, and they were super happy, laughing, fun, gregarious people, living life by their own means, being an outlaw, whether good or bad. And some of the people that I know that are millionaires are completely horrible. So just being kind to yourself, not being so hard. I have to remind myself for my failures, or if I didn't rise to the level of my standard yesterday, I'm like, I can't beat myself down, or anyone around me. I'm like, I could just be kind to myself and say, let's just do better. So that doesn't cost any money. It doesn't really have, it doesn't take any schooling. So that's the act of kindness. If you walk into the world just trying to be kind to yourself and others, everything else will work itself out for the most part.
That's excellent. Jim, thank you so much for coming in and talking with us, and wish you the best of luck out there.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity, Mark. Keep on doing this great work.
Thank you very much, Jim.